afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Climate Live K12 session for students, educators, and the public. This is a video series brought to you by the Columbia Climate School. My name is Laurel Zaimashihi, and I'm facilitating today's session. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Climate School, we are a school that was founded at Columbia University in July 2020, and it's the first new school at Columbia in over 25 years. So we're extremely excited, and it's dedicated to advancing transdisciplinary climate research. As a hub for innovative climate solutions, the Climate School brings together experts from across fields to address the most pressing climate challenges of our time. The Columbia Climate School is committed to shaping future leaders to drive climate solutions forward in every sector by offering educational programs for degree seeking students, high school students, teachers, professional learners, and the public. By equipping changemakers with knowledge and skills, the Climate School is empowering essential stakeholders in the fight for a just and prosperous society on a healthy planet. So, what we're hoping to do with these Climate Live sessions is to introduce you all to the interdisciplinary work through our scientific experts and students. These monthly sessions run throughout the academic year from October through June. So, welcome to the first session of the academic year. Each month, we focus on a different topic and it will be directed towards a certain age range. So, for today's session, Exploring Biodiversity, Life on Land and in the Water, we are joined by Columbia University's Biodiversity Club. We're going to have an engaging introduction to the wonders of biodiversity through stories of life on land and in the water. Students will discover how species interact, why they matter, and how caring for ecosystems can shape future opportunities. So, I am going to share in the chat a link to our K-12 student and educator page in the case you're interested in learning more about future events or sessions like this one. And you can always revisit any of the past Climate Live sessions through our Climate School's YouTube page, which I'll also put in the chat. Um, Please note that this is a Zoom webinar, so you will be unable to um, turn your video on or turn your microphone on, but we do want questions. So please use the Q&A button to ask any questions at any point throughout the presentation, and we'll leave plenty of time at the end to answer them. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the Biodiversity Club. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. So I think we should start with a brief intro into what is biodiversity. So biodiversity is basically the variety of all living things on Earth, from the tiniest bacteria to entire ecosystems like forests and coral reefs. It includes three main levels. So there's species diversity, which is a number and variety of species like plants, animals, fungi, microorganisms. Genetic diversity, so the differences within a single species, which help species adapt to change. And then there's ecosystem diversity, which is the variety of habitats such as ocean, deserts, or wetlands. In short, biodiversity is what keeps our planet alive and functioning, where every little living thing plays a role in maintaining that balance. And that balance shows up in many of the functions biodiversity provides us every single day. So what are the functions of biodiversity? It supports life as we know it. So by providing us services, it gives us essentials like food, raw materials, fresh water, and even modern medicine ingredients. It's also a regulating service. So healthy ecosystems regulate the climate, purify air and water, they store carbon, they prevent erosion, they enable pollination. It also provides us cultural services, so recreation, mental and physical health. There's a reason why when someone's not doing well, you're like, go take a walk in nature, it'll make you feel better. And then habitat services, of course, biodiversity provides the living spaces that allow species, including us, to survive. So we know climate change is real and it has major effects on biodiversity. So it's reshaping ecosystems everywhere, on land, in the oceans, and in freshwaters. Unfortunately, we're seeing local species disappear, new diseases spread, and mass die-offs of plants and animals. Some species have already gone extinct because they simply couldn't adapt fast enough. But biodiversity doesn't just suffer from climate change, it actually helps fight it. Forests, oceans, and soils act as natural carbon sinks, so they absorb about half of the greenhouse gases that we humans emit. So by conserving and restoring ecosystems, we're not just protecting wildlife, we're also reducing emissions and helping communities adapt to the changing climate. So this is what brings us to what scientists call the twin crisis. So climate change and biodiversity loss. These two crises are deeply connected, and if we ignore one, we make the other worse. Climate change drives species loss, and losing biodiversity weakens nature's ability to regulate the climate. So protecting biodiversity is therefore essential for both mitigation, so reducing greenhouse gases, but also adaptation, so coping with the changes that are already here. Nature-based solutions, so like restoring forests, wetlands, and mangroves, are really powerful tools here because they store carbon, protect communities from floods, provide habitat for wildlife, so which benefits climate, people, and nature all at once. For example, restoring mangroves in places like Indonesia has helped protect coastal villages from storms while pulling carbon from the atmosphere. So ultimately, protecting biodiversity is not just about saving species, it's about saving the systems that sustain all life, including our own. So, yeah.
Awesome. So biodiversity in the water, at least for me, my love for biodiversity in the water really stemmed from this past summer where I had the opportunity of taking a research course in the Cayman Islands. So here's me snorkeling for one of the first times, trying to wave to the camera. And when I was snorkeling in the Cayman Islands, when I looked under the water, it really felt like I had discovered a whole new world, full of colors, shapes, and creatures I had never seen before. I got to study how different underwater habitats like coral reefs, seagrass beds, and mangrove forests are all connected like pieces of a giant puzzle. In terms of what I specifically studied, like I said, I looked at the coral reefs, seagrass, and mangrove forests. So looking at specifically what each of these ones do, the coral reefs are like underwater cities home to fish, crabs, octopuses, sharks, and other animals. Seagrass beds are like underwater gardens where turtles, seahorses, and manatees can find food and shelter. And then mangrove forests have tangled roots where fish, crabs, and dugongs are commonly found. They can also provide habitat for birds and monkeys, and that's because they have the root system under the water, and then their foliage is on top, so they're able to help both land and water animals. And then looking at all these three habitats, it's really important to examine how each of them work independently, but also collectively. Just a fun terminology term where there's the transition zone between, for example, the coral reefs and the seagrass beds, right where that line is, that's called an ecotone or ecozone. And that specifically allows for those ecosystem services to really demonstrate all the power that that type of habitat can do. And it's really exciting to see what each of these three can do, and how, for example, coral reefs can really help with storm buffering and can help decrease land destruction. And in terms of human impact, warmer ocean water from climate change causes coral bleaching, which makes corals sick. Just something to note is that there's this type of algae which are on coral reefs called zooxanthellae. And how it was described to me is that there are certain factors such as warming oceans caused by climate change, which almost causes the coral reefs to almost throw up the zooxanthellae, which actually causes them to be bleached. An important note as well is that just because a coral is bleached doesn't mean it is dead. If it happens enough times beyond repair, that's when it can be very devastating. But just all this to say that there is hope to try and save our coral reefs. Other things that human impact has done is pollution like plastic waste and chemicals can really harm animals. And then as well, today people are catching way too many fish from the ocean. About 1 out of every 3 fishing areas in the world is being used faster than the fish can grow back. So how you can think of this is almost like you're baking cookies, and almost they're the cookies on the tray, which you're baking, are being eaten faster than you can bake them. So this is happening to 1/3 of the fish population. With this being said, there are ways that we can help. There are lots of efforts to grow new coral and mangrove trees, some of which that Ines talked about. It's also important to small actions really make a difference, such as wearing reef-safe sunscreen to prevent coral bleaching. Again, it's having non-reef safe sunscreen doesn't mean that it will necessarily sorry, having non-reef safe sunscreen doesn't mean that you will automatically kill all the coral, but just having a little bit of reef safe sunscreen will make an impact as well. And then finally, also participating in beach cleanups to keep plastic out of the oceans. And handing it off to Lucia.
Thanks, Kierra. So biodiversity on land is probably what we are most accustomed to considering when we talk about biodiversity. So the state of terrestrial biodiversity today is not very good. It's facing a critical moment. Just in the US alone, 34% of plant species and 40% of animals are now at risk of extinction, and 41% of our ecosystems are at risk of collapse. Globally, forests are home to 80% of all terrestrial biodiversity, but species extinction is accelerating faster than ever before, putting critical services biodiversity provides at risk, such as clean air, fresh water, pollination that leads to our having food, and disease regulation. Invasive species, climate change, land use conversion, and pollution are all contributing to this decline. Speaking of which, of land use conversion, agriculture is actually the leading driver of biodiversity loss worldwide, primarily through converting this wild natural habitat like forests and grasslands and wetlands into farmland. This destroys the native ecosystems and deprives wildlife of their food and shelter. And currently half of the Earth's habitable land is used for agricultural purposes, for livestock grazing and crops, leaving only a remaining half as wild or natural land. The expansion and intensification of agriculture has resulted in significant deforestation, accounting for almost 80% of global deforestation, as well as habitat fragmentation and pollution from pesticides and fertilizers, all of which reduces biodiversity both on farms and in surrounding natural areas. This extensive agricultural footprint poses critical challenges for biodiversity conservation and sustainable food production into the future. As you can see from this graphic, of all the biomass of mammals currently on Earth, 60% are farm animals, 36% are humans, and only 4% left on this planet are wild. Ecosystem resilience refers to the ability of ecosystems to recover from environmental disturbances such as droughts, fires, storms, and land conversion. Healthy, biodiverse ecosystems are much better at withstanding these disruptions, providing stable resources and supporting livelihoods. When biodiversity is lost, ecosystems are weakened, making services like water retention, carbon storage, and food production less reliable, especially as climate change brings more frequent and severe disruptions. Biodiversity is vital for soil health. Diverse organisms, from earthworms to fungi, play crucial roles in breaking down organic material, recycling nutrients, and supporting fertile soils. Healthy soils foster resilient crops and reduce the need for artificial fertilizers, while also increasing a land's capacity to retain water, a critical function as climate change causes more droughts and floods. Improving soil health through conversion and biodiversity management strengthens this resilience, helping perpetuate food security in a changing climate. Terrestrial ecosystems, especially forests, are powerful natural allies in the fight against climate change. They absorb more than 2.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually, helping to regulate the Earth's climate. As forests and grasslands are degraded or lost, however, this ability weakens, leading to increased greenhouse gas concentrations and a feedback loop that further endangers biodiversity. Conserving and restoring these habitats is key for both biodiversity and climate regulation. They help us, these different ecosystems, such in ways that both Ines and Kierra mentioned. They provide habitat, store carbon, stabilize the climate, They support our food systems, such as providing grazing, pollination, and groundwater. Healthy soils, as mentioned earlier, also supported by rich biodiversity, are essential for this food production and water management. Losing any one of these systems will impact livelihoods, food access, water access, and health. So there are careers and everyday actions for biodiversity, and my friend Ines is going to tell you more.
Oh, sorry, we're just switching chairs around. So we've seen why biodiversity matters and now we can talk about how we can each make a difference. So obviously one of the most direct ways to do that is careers in biodiversity. So there are many professional paths in this field. So conservation biologists, ecological researchers who like study and protect ecosystems, wildlife managers, but also natural resource planners who work on the ground to balance human needs with nature's limits. But there's also more corporate environmental consultants who advise companies and governments on how to operate more sustainably and minimize their impact on biodiversity. But biodiversity isn't limited to those specific areas. It really is connected to every job. So whether you're in business, design, policy, or technology, biodiversity affects the resources you use, the people you serve, and the world you live in. So by recognizing that link, we can all make choices that support biodiversity, from how we manage projects and products at work to how we collaborate and communicate at work. And I mean, beyond our careers, everyday habits matter as well. So really simple actions like eating more local and seasonal food, reducing single-use plastics, planting native species, cutting energy and water waste, all help to protect biodiversity. And these, as mentioned earlier, because of the twin crisis, these same actions are also helping fight climate change. So when we restore nature and reduce our impact, we're helping both of these. So whether you pursue a career in biodiversity or you just make small changes in your daily life, every action does count. And speaking of action, we wanted to highlight our club. So the Columbia Biodiversity Club, which unites us students. We're all passionate about biodiversity, and we organize visits, volunteer activities, and speaker events to learn more about biodiversity in general. So yeah, our goal is to really raise awareness, build a community, and inspire action. So to protect biodiversity on not just campus, but everywhere. So thank you very much for listening, and we will now be taking any questions. We also have our email and Instagram and LinkedIn if you guys want to send us questions if you can't think of any right now. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. That was such a engaging conversation about biodiversity, both land and water, and really how these challenges that, you know, animals are facing are not just from like human activities that you may see, like plastic pollution, but also climate change. And there's a lot of threats that they're facing right now. Um, yes, please use the Q&A for any questions. We do have a question. Someone says, what are some opportunities for middle school students to get involved with climate schools activities? I can take that one. At the moment, a lot of we only have one in-person program that is the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains. It's a 2-week summer program that focuses on empowering young people to build climate solutions in their own communities. This is really for high school students. We do accept rising ninth graders. But we are looking at some more opportunities for middle school age students, also some more local activities and programs in New York City. So I will suggest that you join our email list if you're not already on it to stay up to date with some of the new initiatives that we're going to be leading. So any questions that you have? What action? Oh,
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I-
Yes.
Well, if anyone of any age wants to participate in helping prevent biodiversity loss in New York City, you can join your local community garden, which will help provide local food sources as well as give you a chance to interact with nature and plant things, which, as we know, plants help sequester carbon.
And also, if you have the choice of choosing your meals, choosing to eat less meat, more vegetarian options is also a great way to support biodiversity loss prevention and help the greenhouse gas emissions as well. So those are just life choices that one can make at any age to help. Something I'd like to add as well is even just going on a walk outside and noticing the nature around you, and then even looking at even small signs, like is there an organization out there that is maintaining this green space? So for example, by Columbia University, there's along Broadway, there's the Broadway Malls Association, and there's so many ways to get involved with them. But I'm sure wherever you're located, just looking for that little plaque to see who helps maintain that green space, and just shooting them an email and seeing or visiting them can always help.
Oh, these are great suggestions. There are so many, especially if you live in New York. There are so many amazing organizations here that are doing a lot of biodiversity and conservation work that I'm sure they're always open to taking volunteers. So thank you for sharing a few of these options. Um, so we have a question: what action is the climate school itself taking as a whole to support the efforts of the amazing biodiversity club? Um, so would you like to share a little bit about kind of our history and the relationship that we have built just through like my work in K-12 and your work in education?
Yeah, in terms of, for example, one of our missions is really to talk about biodiversity and engaging the community. So that's why I reached out to Laurel to really, inspire others and trying to get involved with that. And something I'd like to note is actually our club, when we first reached out to Laurel, and she was like, oh, like come on, we were actually a bit nervous to come up here and present to all of you. So I'd like to highlight that anyone can do science, anyone can get involved with biodiversity and learn, and it's important to talk about what you're passionate about. And we're all here to try and make a good difference. And in terms of other communication or activities that we do, we put on a lot of events for students to try and get students involved. We have a newsletter, and yeah.
I was going to say as well, it's great getting involved with K12 and a different audience because we are in a sustainability program. So by nature, I think a lot of people who come to our club are obviously already know about a little bit about biodiversity, are more interested. So I think this is what's great about this. It's maybe reaching people that wouldn't usually think about biodiversity in general. So yeah.
I'm so glad that you did reach out because it's such an incredibly important topic. And the goal of the Climate Live K-12 series is to highlight various topics that intersect with climate. So you can really have this broad understanding of how climate change is really impacting different areas of our lives, but also that there are solutions in so many of these different areas. So whether you are interested in biodiversity or maybe you're interested in politics or art or literature, there is a role for you to play in the climate movement. And so I'm just really grateful that we had the opportunity to run this session. So big thank you to the Biodiversity Club. And you briefly mentioned, but I kind of wanted to give you also the stage to share. You're all students as well in a program that's an affiliate to the climate school. So do you want to share about the program that you're in right now?
Sure. So we are in the sustainability management program at SBS, which is about sustainability and maybe the intersection of business, but we get the choice with a wide variety of courses, which is great because, like you say, everybody can specialize. I think I'm more into everything that's corporate strategy, reporting. That's more my area of interest, but I know Kierra has different areas, so it's a great course in that way. Yeah, don't know if you guys want to.
No, that pretty much sounds right. I guess just kind of what you're talking about, Laurels, there are so many ways you can interact with climate, whether that's through corporate or engineering or art. Like there's so many ways. Again, we're all on our own path, our own journey. And we all got this. Like even small actions make a difference. So.
Absolutely. We have another question. Was the trip to the Cayman? So I think this is for you, Kierra. a part of a class? Did you write a paper after your research? I think they're more interested in learning about that experience.
Yeah, so that was part of a class in our program. It was a 10-day class, but it felt like it was a world changing. Like truly, it felt like 3 months in there, for in a good way. And so that was that. And then in terms of field work we learned about quadrats and transects, like how to do the specific field work research, and applying it to the different ecosystems and learning how the different ecosystems, independently work, but then how they interact with one another. We didn't have to write a paper specifically for that class. We actually wrote field note journals. So what we noticed, and that was really interesting because everyone has different things that they notice as well throughout the trip. But yes, something that it's so funny that one opportunity sparks a different opportunity, because through that one, I had the opportunity to connect with one of the professors on the trip, and now I'm doing an independent research project on optimizing ecosystem services in urban settings. So it's so cool how the world works. If anyone on the call is interested in getting to know or get involved and volunteer, feel free to somehow connect with me through the email, I guess. But yeah.
That's amazing. And the way that you described your first experience snorkeling was very reminiscent of my first experience snorkeling, where you just are mesmerized by this incredible world that you had no idea existed. It's really breathtaking. So I loved hearing, the excitement that you shared as you were telling about your experience.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's one thing too, is that, but in specifically New York City, a lot of times it's very go, 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 go. So biodiversity really helps almost ground you and like really taking a moment, pausing, looking at what's around you.
Couldn't agree more. We have a question from Luca who asks, what are things that people can do every day to help promote biodiversity? Um, Things that might not occur to everyone.
No, yeah, I mean, something like I mentioned earlier is your food choices, at home or at school. Um, if you, find community gardens, as Kierra mentioned, if there's a park you love, seeing who is in charge of maintaining that park and reaching out, seeing if you can help. Planting wildflower seeds at your house, if you have that capability, especially pollinator plants. Make sure that they are local, though. We don't want to bring in plants that aren't supposed to be there. There are also, if you like bird watching, you can track what birds you see and report them online so that scientists have more access to data about bird migrations. There are lots of events, like even at your local farmers market, you can find how food systems and biodiversity are intertwined, and buying local food and how that helps biodiversity as well. So those are some of my ideas. Do you have any?
No, I agree. I think also reducing your own waste and how much you use. I think, yeah, like you said, yours go, 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 life's go, go, go. So sometimes you get like, oh, maybe I could bring my own cups to the coffee shop and get coffee in there, and like trying to reduce waste and water and energy in general, always remembering those little actions long term make a big difference. So I would say that as well.
Being mindful of what you consume, and even I think one thing I mentioned in the presentation is using reef safe sunscreen. Even though we live very far from Little Cayman, for example, it still makes a difference in terms of that. Eventually, the products on your skin like are gonna go into the water streams, and it does impact the habitats.
Yeah, like looking at what product you're buying and being a bit more mindful, and maybe do a bit more research on it.
Yeah, I really like that suggestion too, because I think it's as consumers, we have a choice when we're buying products to make sure we're buying and supporting brands that really are creating something in a way that's not going to have a huge impact on the environment, whether it's during the creation or the use process. And when it comes to sunscreen, some of the sunscreens that are bad for the corals and bad for marine life are also bad for us. They can soak into our skin and be endocrine disruptors. So we want to be careful. So we're taking care of ourselves too. Um, just to follow up, Luca had one more asking specifically about like volunteer opportunities. So interpret this question as just trying to better understand what would it look like if someone wanted to volunteer. Like, do you reach out? Do you cold reach out to an organization that you're interested in? And then, what are some of the like benefits, I guess, aside from like community building and things that you have found in your own volunteering work?
I often, yeah, just cold emailing or direct messaging an organization is the way to go. They have someone on the other end who's ready to help you figure out the best volunteering path forward for you.
Mhm. I mean, Kierra last week volunteered for the Billion Oyster Project, and I'm volunteering this Friday, but it was as easy as going on their website, picking a date, saying, yes, I'll be there. So sometimes it's people want the help, people want volunteers. So it's just about doing a little bit of research and reaching out and asking other people what they're doing.
And in terms of volunteering events too, there's multiple ways like you can go about it. You can either volunteer once or you can have like try and ask for like a regular amount. So just looking at what your capacity and what your schedule is like, you can let the volunteer organization know. And typically people organizations or people that are within this sphere of climate or biodiversity, if they don't need volunteers, they might refer you to another organization or whatnot. And in terms of what you can get beyond the community building, honestly, one, fun. It's really fun, two, like meeting people that you maybe wouldn't have met previously, and three, a different type of learning. I think there really comes a different mindset of learning when interacting with nature and being hands-on in the field through volunteering. You'll just notice whether that's it really depends what you're doing, but you'll notice maybe problems that you didn't even know existed, or something might spark within you that you're like, oh, I this research question, I wonder what that's like, and then you go down that path.
In that vein, there's also empowerment. I know for a lot of people, climate change is very scary and you can often feel overwhelmed. But by volunteering in your community and seeing that you are having a direct impact on bettering the planet, it is very empowering. So,
Mhm.
yay.
Beautifully said. Yes. And in talking about climate change, this is our last question. What are your thoughts on the current dispensation's casual take or tone on global warming?
Bad. So just because a higher power speaks rhetoric that climate change is not a problem or doesn't exist does not make that true. They are also a minority. They're just a very loud minority. So what we have to do is remember that climate change exists, it is real, and the majority of people on this planet are on our side, and fight where you can. Don't expect, like, we are not expecting to change policy at a federal level. That's not what we can do. But what we can do is better, where we live, our community. We can better Columbia campus. We can better New York City. We can better our own apartment buildings. You just have to pick and choose your capacity and ability to fight. And remember, just because the minority is loud does not make them right.
Yeah, it's so true. I I think that was very well said. Um, and you will also notice if in your communities, maybe if you look globally, the climate solutions haven't stopped. Like even
Yeah.
though that they're saying this from the top down, the work on the local level is not just continuing but growing. People are like, okay, but it is impacting us, and so we are going to build solutions. And that, as you said beautifully, starts on a local level. So I really appreciate you sharing that message with all of us. We are at time. I want to thank you all again for joining and sharing on this really important topic. And thank you everyone for joining and having such amazing questions. You know, I think it was unforeseen when we had discussed, months ago about this topic, but recently, a conservation hero, Jane Goodall, has unfortunately passed. But I think the work that you're doing as a club, the work that you're inspiring younger people to continue on in conservation, I think we're building this long legacy that Jane was hoping for. And so, it continues with us. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share on this expertise with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Having us.